So my grandparents were jazz musicians in the 30s and 40s in Seattle. My grandfather was quite big in the jazz scene, the local jazz scene. They moved down to LA, cut a couple of records, kind of hung out with all the people from the big band jazz era, Glenn Miller and Count Basie and Duke Ellington, Ella Fitzgerald, all those people they were friends with. And as they started to have a family, they decided that the music scene in LA wasn't really for them. They didn't really care for the scene, kind of some of the stuff that was going on in the background. So my grandfather was trying to figure out, what his life was going to look like. And both he and my grandmother decided, hey, let's give fishing a try. We really like it. So they actually moved out to Nia Bay on a beach about 5 miles outside of town that you could only get to by rowboat. And they spent the summers out there catching salmon, rowing it back into Nia Bay and selling it. And they did that for a couple of years, and my grandfather got asked to run a charter boat. So he studied for the captain's license, got his captain's license, started running charters, and my grandmother, being the independent, strong woman, said, well, if you can do it, I can do it better. So she studied and got her license, and she was the first woman on the West Coast and the second in the US to get a captain's license. And it started from there. She had a pretty good following of people that wanted to only fish with her, because she outfished all the men every day. I mean, that was just kind of her legacy. But she never really talked about it.
Occasionally someone would come down and not realize that they had booked with a female captain. And so sometimes some of the fellows didn't know what to think about that. And one time we were at Nia Bay, and a guy came down and got on the boat and then realized that my grandma was going to drive the boat and take him out fishing. He didn't know what to think about that. So he hemmed and hawed and actually got off the boat back on the dock. I said, well, I was the deckhand. I says, you can do what you like, but all these other little boats out here are going to be following her boat because she knows where the fish are. And he got back on board, and we caught fish that day.
So my mom wrote a little story that we found after they passed away. It's called For the Love of Fish by Marilyn Jones. It says, there was no premonition as to how far this first step into a nautical world would take us when we purchased that first little boat. Who would have thought of other boats, bigger boats, or dreamed of fishing off the Washington coast 15 to 20 miles or more, taking passengers for hire? I would have paled at the thought of being the Northwest's first woman skipper, who fished in the roughest of waters, the thickest of fog, along with the toughest of fishermen. I, who used to be frightened when my husband rocked our rowboat loose from a submerged stump while we were lake fishing. But those things happened to us by degrees, and each new accomplishment as naturally as if we were born below decks instead of being sired as farmers.
I don't remember ever not being on the water. That's just what we did as a family. We fished and spent time out on the coast and out of Port Angeles, and that's all we ever did was fish, and we loved it.